There's an idea that states time heals nothing unless you move along with it. Imagine the ability to completely disassociate or detach from all those things that don't feel right. They're not quite you. Imagine the ability to leave the parts of you, the little pieces of yesterday that you carry around, behind. Think of the lightness, the calm. See, you have that ability. We all do. To water the right thing and eliminate the distraction. I want you to close your eyes as I walk through a story about Emma. Once upon a time, in a quaint village nestled between rolling hills and serene meadows, there lived a woman named Emma. And Emma was known throughout the village to always be working on her garden. It was a colorful tapestry of blooming flowers, fragrant herbs, and luscious fruits and vegetables. And Emma would spend countless hours tending to her plants, finding peace and joy in their growth. But despite her diligent care, Emma noticed that some plants just never seemed to thrive. They wilted, they refused to bloom, they grew weak. Emma felt a pang of sadness every time she saw these struggling plants. She poured more water, added extra fertilizer, gave them the most sunlight, but nothing seemed to help. In fact, the more effort she put into these plants, the more drained and frustrated she became. One warm spring afternoon, while Emma was, of course, in her garden, her neighbor, Mrs. Willow, an elderly woman with a lifetime of gardening experience, stopped by for a visit. Mrs. Willow admired Emma's garden, but she also noticed the struggling plants and the worry lines on Emma's face. "Emma, my dear," Mrs. Willow said gently, "I've noticed how hard you've been working on those plants, the ones that just don't seem to thrive. It seems that sometimes, despite our best efforts, some plants are not meant to flourish in our gardens. Perhaps, Emma, it's time to let them go." And Emma was taken aback. The thought of removing the plants that she'd nurtured for so long felt wrong, felt like giving up. "But Mrs. Willow, I've invested so much time and energy into these plants, it feels crazy to just abandon them. It doesn't feel right." Mrs. Willow smiled kindly. "It's not about abandoning them, dear. It's about making space for new life to grow. By holding on to what isn't thriving, you're preventing your garden from reaching its full potential. Trust me, letting go can sometimes bring unexpected beauty and joy." And that night, Emma stayed up late, pondering Mrs. Willow's words. It dawned on her that Her garden had become a reflection of her own life, holding on to things that no longer served her, afraid to let go and make space for something new. With a deep breath and a sense of resolve, Emma decided it's time to take a leap of faith. And so the next morning, Emma began the very difficult task of moving the struggling plants. She carefully, one by one, dug them up, thanking them for the lessons that they taught her. And as she worked, her emotions surprised her. She felt a strange sense of relief and lightness. Sure, the garden looked bare in some places, but it also felt open. It felt full of potential. And in the following weeks, Emma planted new seeds and young plants in the spaces she had cleared. To her amazement, the garden began to flourish like it never had before. The new plants grew strong and vibrant, their colors and scents filling the air with renewed energy. The entire garden seemed to come alive, a testament to the power of letting go and making room for growth. Soon Emma's garden became the envy of the entire village, and people came from near and far to admire its beauty. But more importantly than that, Emma felt a profound change within herself. She realized that by letting go of what no longer served her, she'd made space for new possibilities and joy in her life. And one sunny afternoon, as Emma sat on her garden bench, good old Mrs. Willow visited again. She looked around at the thriving garden and nodded in approval. "You've done a wonderful job, Emma. Your garden is more beautiful than it's ever been." Emma smiled, her heart full of gratitude. "Thank you, Mrs. Willow. Your wisdom helped me see that sometimes the most important thing we can do is let go of what holds us back, of what takes our energy and our time, the things that aren't moving us in the direction we most want to be. It sure wasn't easy, but it was worth it." Mrs. Willow patted Emma's hand. "Remember, my dear, our gardens and our lives are always growing and changing. So embrace the journey and the lessons it brings, and you'll find joy and abundance in every season." And so Emma continued to nurture her garden and herself, always mindful of the balance between holding on and letting go. Her story became a cherished tale in the village, a reminder of the freedom and happiness that come from embracing change and making space for new growth. The garden in this story, fantastic representation of life, of the story we all try and cultivate, the evolved self that we move towards and care for and attempt to nurture. And the struggling plants symbolize toxic or unproductive aspects of that journey. It's funny how by default we have this sense of loyalty to yesterday. It's almost like without thinking, we carry around the stories we used to tell, the habits, the routines, the places we used to go, the expectations others placed upon us, the burdens we used to carry. We don't disassociate from them because we don't think to. There's such immense power in looking around and asking a few obvious questions. 1. Where do I want to go? Right, what does the ideal situation look like? It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be cars or houses. It can be. But when you close your eyes and think about your perfect day, what are you doing? Who's with you? Where are you? How are you spending your time? How are you earning your living? What are you giving to the world? The next piece of that is, well, what are you doing today? Is what you're doing today contributing to that vision? Are the people in your life a positive influence? Do they make you feel better, stronger? Do they contribute to your momentum? And what about your actions? Are they small steps towards a North Star that matters to you? Or are you stepping just a step? Are you doing things because, hey, I've never thought about it before. It's just what I do. See, you are stronger than you think you are. And you have more control than you could ever imagine. And bringing that to life means making sure that you are surrounded by things and people that allow you to succeed. You don't have to carry things around just because you did yesterday. And if you think of your past as a backpack, right, where every day is a little pebble that you put in there, imagine the freedom in sitting down, opening that backpack, and just getting rid of all those pebbles that have become a part of you by default, unintentionally, that do nothing but slow you down. Life's too short for that. One of the most important conversations I've had in my adult life was having pizza with a friend, and we're catching up, talking about life, going back and forth, and I made this comment. I had about maybe 2 or 3 pieces of a small pizza in front of me. It made a joke about how full I am, right, as I continued to eat the pizza. And my friend smiles and says, you don't have to finish that. And I said, what do you mean? Like, I paid for it. I'm going to finish it. That's a waste of money. And my friend said, no, it's a sunk cost. Because the money's gone. It's not coming back. You can't return the pizza. But if you eat those 2 or 3 pieces just because you paid for it, you will inevitably feel worse. And I thought, you're right. I am not going to be better off eating these 2 pieces of pizza. And I love silly, kind of trivial metaphors like this, because for some reason they make the big picture, seemingly complex things simpler. I can't tell you how many times I've been eating that metaphorical pizza because I paid for it, right? Or refusing to turn around or let go or leave because, hey, look how far I've come. Yeah, it might not be good for me, but look how long it took me to get here. Look how much I had to give up. Yeah, it might not fit. It might not be right anymore. But think about what I gave up, right? Or traded or exchanged for this. And the reality is freedom, just like Emma, is saying, no, push that toy sailboat out to sea and let it go. Take those plants that are no longer contributing to your garden, pull them up by the roots, and create space. Because in that space, you now have magic. You have infinite opportunity for new things to grow and flourish. Infinite potential and possibility. And that's really what this is about. It makes us ask, what do I really want? How many people do you talk to every day that don't elevate you? Do you ever think about that? Think about it and then understand there's nothing in your life, nothing that occurs in your life that you haven't allowed, that you haven't signed off on. Now, a life of contentment means diving fully into that awareness, that simple formula. Here's where I want to go, and here's how I'm going to get there. And I owe no one else anything. If your garden isn't flourishing, guess what? You can't help other people. As the saying goes, you can't fill other people's cups if yours is empty. So I hope, if anything, this helps you see the value in really curating what matters. I hope it gives you the freedom to leave the other stuff behind, to really think about what's in that backpack, really think about what's in your garden, and clear out the things that are not you, because a future you will say thank you. And the people around that future you that you care about, that you love, will thank you. And the world in totality will thank you. Time heals nothing unless you move along with it. So have the courage to leave today behind and move right along.